Single entry out here, but I think there's a lot of things you got to like about this smoky heifer out here. As she gets set up here, one that you got to really appreciate, she's got a lot of shape out of that backside of that shoulder. Stays true down that top line. You get in behind her, she's really expressive in terms of that hind leg. She hits the ground with a lot of foot and bone and mass. She's still relaxed in that knee up front. Maybe I'd like to change her, maybe give her a little bit more forerib and flank at this stage in the game, but I think there's a lot of good qualities about her, and I think she could have withstand some competition. Let's go ahead and give this young lady a round of applause.
Congratulations to our first blue of the senior heifer calf class, exhibited by Samantha Zupke. Coming in the ring at this time, we have our summer yearling heifer.
Another single out here in your commercial division, and a heifer that when you analyze this one from the profile, you got to really appreciate the way that she's feminine through her head and neck. She ties that neck neatly on the top side of that shoulder, but from that shoulder back, she reads with a lot of good mass, a lot of good rib shape. You get in behind her, she's really expressive. She hits the ground with enough foot and bone. When she gets out and goes, she's maybe a little bit tight and restricted off both ends of her framework, but in terms of putting a lot of good qualities together, this one does it. Let's go ahead and give that young lady a round of applause.
Congratulations to our first blue ribbon winner of the summer yearling heifer calf, exhibited by Piper Murfeld. Coming to the ring at this time, we have our junior yearling heifers.
good quality class females out here, but that obviously they don't want to stand still very well. But I'm going to use the young man's black heifer to go ahead and win this particular class. She's just simply more there. There's just simply more there. She's more maternal in terms of that fore-rib and flank. She opens more up in terms of her rib cage, which lays a nice heavy muscle top. She's wide in her pin set. You get in behind her. She's the most expressive in terms of her muscle. She hits the ground with the most foot and bone. However, where I like to change her is from her shoulder forward. I like to blend her through that head and neck ever so slightly, clean her up through that neck and chest area. You do that one, and that one's going to be pretty tough to beat. But just in terms of putting the most positives together, I think she's a logical place to start. Young lady coming out here next with the black and white heifer. One that actually I like a little bit more about her than the one that wins this class is she's the way that the head and neck is assembled. She's got more reach out front. She's more elevated. She's got more femininity through that head and neck. You analyze her when she gets out and goes. I think she fills her track on a consistent basis. However, she is pretty hard doing in terms of her fore-rib and flank, and I just give a little bit more rib cage, and she gives my class winner a run for her money. Young man's red heifer that closes out the class. On the standstill, I like this one as good as any. She's still feminine. She's still youthful. She's fresh. She's got some elegant look to her. She's good in terms of her rib cage. You get in behind her. There's plenty of muscle shape. It's whenever she gets out on the lead that she kind of falls to that third place spot. She unhinges behind that shoulder, and consequently she gets up in her spine and just wants to run downhill. You fix those problems, and you can move her up towards the top of the class. But a really good class of females, first through third. So let's give those three exhibitors a round of applause.
Congratulations. Earning a first blue in our junior yearling heifer class was exhibited by Alex Lukey. Second blue, Madison Wagner. And our first red, Wyatt Warmka. Coming into the ring at this time, we have our cow class. Immediately following our cow class, we're going to name our champion overall, champion commercial female. Once we have those named, we're going to be going into our supreme champion beef females of the open show, of the breeding stock junior show, excuse me. I'd like to make one correction to that. As soon as we're done with our cow class, we're going to be naming a junior champion or a champion heifer. Then we will be moving into our overall commercial champion commercial female.
Coming out here in your cow division, I'm going to use this young man's cream-colored cow to go ahead and win this particular division. She is the EST of this class. She's the biggest rib. She's the heaviest muscled. She's the widest in her fin set. She's the heaviest at the ground. Maybe I'd like to change her, though, is maybe make her a little bit more adequate in the way that that neck ties into the top side of that shoulder, but that's getting pretty nitpicky on a pretty good cow. And that's what I actually like about the young lady's cow that comes out next. One that runs uphill. She's got some length and extension, but from her shoulder back, there's just simply not enough there in relation to my class winner. So that's why they're going to get placed 1-2 here today. So let's go ahead and give those exhibitors a round of applause.
Congratulations to our blue ribbon winners of our cow class. First blue was exhibited by Riley Rennock, second blue by Brenna Drager. At this time, we're going to name our junior champion, Heifer, of the breeding stock show. So what we will need is we'll need Cassandra Fick with your junior heifer calf. We'll need Samantha Zupke with your senior heifer calf. We'll need Piper Murfeld with your summer yearling heifer, and Alex Lukey with your junior yearling heifer.
Let's go ahead and give your commercial female exhibitors out here a round of applause. Really good quality from the youngest all the way to your oldest here. Starting with the young lady's red and white one down there. One that I thought was maybe just a little bit green, coming in a few more pieces. I think she's adequate in terms of her rib shape and gets out and goes comfortably enough. Young lady out of class 2, one that you got to really appreciate, feminine. I think she tracks probably as good as any out here in terms of filling that foot track on a consistent basis. Still got a good look, just needs a little bit more rib cage, a little bit more time on feed. You got the young lady out of class 3 here, one that's really, really good fronted, really feminine through that front end. You get in from behind that shoulder, she's really, really expressive in terms of that muscle. I'd maybe like to make her a little bit more comfortable when she's pulled to the lead. And then you got the young man's black heifer out here. That's kind of the combination of all of them. She's adequate in terms of her rib cage. You get in behind her, she's expressive. I think she's good enough on those rear two. Is she perfect out of her shoulder and front end? No. But just in terms of offering the most in terms of rib cage, muscle shape, foot and bone, I think she's a logical place to start. She's going to go ahead and be your champion commercial.
Congratulations to Alex Lukey for being named the junior champion Heifer.
I guess for reserve, it gets a little bit tougher in my mind, and I think it comes down to the young ladies cream one out of class 2, and then this black and white one in front of me. Two females that are built kind of similarity. They're good in terms of their head and neck. They stay true down the top line. They're athletic off both ends of their framework. I just think that there's one out here that balances up a little bit better in terms of that fore-rib and flank. Maybe has a little bit more reach off those front ends, and maybe the way that the shoulders assembled. The young lady's black and white heifer here in front is going to go ahead and be reserve.
Congratulations to Madison Wagner for exhibiting the Reserve Junior Champion. At this time, we're going to name our Supreme Champion Beef Female.
When it comes to your overall commercial out here, there's obviously some size and scale difference between the two of them here. I think that there's just one that balances up a little bit better. Everything kind of fits on there. She's not out there in any one area. The young man's black heifer is going to go ahead and win.
Congratulations to Alex Lukey for exhibiting the Champion Overall Commercial Female.
You come out here for your reserve, and just as easy as I thought it was to pick the young man's heifer to go ahead and win, I thought there was a pair out here that shared a lot of similarities from the same class. The young lady's black and white heifer is going to go ahead and be your reserve.
Congratulations to Madison Wagner for exhibiting the Reserve Champion Overall Commercial Female. We will now go ahead and name our Supreme Champion Beef Female.
I guess before I start talking these individuals, let's go ahead and give all these guys a round of applause out here. A really good set of females out here all day today, and I think that these 4 out here represent your county fairly well. I'm gonna start talking them from the commercials and work my way up to the cow-calf pair. The reserve commercial, you want to get, like I said, one that you really appreciate. She's long and extended. She's good in terms of that top line. Just unfortunately, she's just not enough rib shape for me today. In relation to my champion commercial, you get one out here she's really good in terms of her fore-rib and flank. She really balances up well when she's on the standstill. You get in behind her, she's really expressive. She hits the ground with the most foot and bone out of the rest of the females in this particular class. When she gets out and goes, she maybe doesn't balance up as nicely. She kind of closes up from behind and maybe gets a little bit too far forward in her shoulder, but a really good female from that shoulder back, and a lot of good things about her. You get your cow out here reserved for your breed division, one that I really like. She silhouettes well. She's long and extended. She stays true down that top line. She's really deep in terms of that center part of her body. You really appreciate her udder. She's athletic out both ends of her framework. I'd maybe like to clean her up to that chest floor and give her a little bit more muscle. And then you get your champion breed animal out here, your cow-calf pair. A cow that I didn't talk a lot of a lot of good things about her. She's really good in terms of that spine. She's long and extended. She's got adequate amount of muscle. She just doesn't blow me in one area. But one thing like I said, I really like about her is that calf that's on her side. So she's obviously doing something right. She's given enough milk and everything like that, given the groceries. That heifer, though, by her side is truly one of the better females out here. She's good and extended. And I think just with more time on feed, that one's going to go ahead and just get better in time. So it's kind of where you set your priorities. Whether you think the commercial, when she's actually turned out on pasture, if she's going to hold together and keep doing what she's doing. She looks really great today, but if you get a calf on her side, you don't know how well she's going to hold together. So it's kind of where you set your priorities, whether a cow that you don't really quite think it just blows you away in any one area, but just in terms of having a tremendous calf on her side, and then one that's maybe looks really good today that hasn't quite proven herself. So like I said, I think you can go either way, and I wouldn't fight you for it, but just in terms of having a high-quality calf on her side, the cow and calf's going to go ahead and be your champion. And just as I was talking to them, I thought it was a really close pair. One that, like I said, this commercial heifer, a lot of good things about her. I just don't know how long I think of her long term when she's actually out on pasture, working for her money. But in terms today, she's good looking, she's sound, big muscled, a nice place to go ahead and be reserved. So let's go ahead and give that young man a round of applause.
Congratulations! Our Supreme Champion Beef Female was exhibited by Caden Atkins. Our Reserve Supreme Champion Beef Female exhibited by Alex Lukey. At this time, we're ready to start our feeder calf show. We'll be starting with our beef calves as soon as we clear the ring. We have 10 entries in our beef feeder calf show. So at this time, you can check in and please start entering the ring. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a moment to hear from our 2021 Dodge County Fairest of the Fair, Alexis Lidke.
Hello, everyone. I think I can still say good morning. It's a wonderful day here at the first day at the Dodge County Fair. So excited to see everybody here, all of these fabulous animals. They're looking great. The exhibitors are doing fabulous. Let's give all those exhibitors a round of applause. I also think it's really important to take a moment here to thank everybody, all the parents, all the volunteers, leaders, 4-H volunteers, all the people who have helped get these kids where they are today. I think back to when I was in 4-H and FFA, I had some really, really fabulous leaders who helped me to turn out to be the person that I am today. So even though I might not have been showing a beef animal here, I still had some really great life lessons learned. So thank you everyone for coming out to the Dodge County Fair. I hope to see you throughout the fair here in these next few days.
Nice job.
a really solid set of feeder calves out here, and I think a lot of quality from first all the way down towards the bottom. You can say probably I picked the biggest one because that would be the easiest route to go. But no, but simply that young lady in the end, that steer go ahead and wins, I think, relatively easy in my mind. He is the heaviest muscled. He is the boldest in terms of his rib shape. You get in behind him, he is the most expressive, yet he floats around the ring comfortably enough. I think he's a logical place to start. I think there's some give and take between second and third, but I have to go with the young man to go ahead and go into second. I just think that steer balances up ever a little bit better. He stays truer down that top line. He stays a little bit more consistent in that head and neck assembly. However, you get in behind him, he's maybe not as expressive as my class winner, and he's definitely not as expressive as the steer that comes out here in third. But just in terms of his ability to get out and go and stay together, I think he's a good place to stay in second. Now, the powerhouse steer that's got probably the most amount of muscles sitting in third. He is the biggest hipped. He is one of the stouter structured ones in this class, but it's when he gets out and goes that he sorts to that third place spot. He unhinges behind that shoulder and wants to get underneath himself when he's pulled to the lead. Young man coming out here in fourth, a big scaled, long body type of a steer. I think he's probably, of the rest of the steers out here, he is going to be one of the easier feeding ones. He is deep in terms of the center part of his body, and I think he's going to have a nice shapely carcass when it's all said and done. Young man's Hereford steer that comes out next, I think he balances up a little bit nicer than the one that's ahead of him. However, when it comes to a muscle standpoint, I just don't think there's simply not enough there, and maybe not as long in terms of his length, the spine. But in terms of one that pieces together, I think he's a really nice looking one from the profile. From here on out, it's kind of where you set your priorities. I think the young lady's all black one here. I think just in terms from a balancing standpoint, he's not out there in any one area, but just the ability to get out and go, have enough of this, have enough of that, yet float around the ring comfortably enough. I think he's a comfortable place. And where it goes from on there, I think it gets relatively tough. You get the young lady's White Sox steer out here, one that's obviously one of the biggest framed ones out here, and it's obviously going to take a little bit more time on feed to finish out. But I think when it's all said and done, that's going to be a really nice looking calf. It might, like I said, it might take a little bit more time, but I think one that's got a lot of good pieces about it. And then from here on out, the last three that kind of close out the class. When in doubt, you muscle them out. Young man's lighter colored one obviously offers a little bit more muscle shape from his shoulder on back, and from there on down. That's how I sort them. But a really good class of feeder cattle, so let's go ahead and give all those exhibitors a round of applause.
Congratulations to our beef feeder calves. Placing first in our champion beef feeder is exhibited by Madison Wagner. Our reserve champion beef feeder exhibited by J.J. Murfeld. Third in the class was Colin Wagner. Fourth, Weston Warmka. Fifth, Everett Klug. Sixth, Hannah Bartlett. Seventh, Olivia Bird. Eighth, Avery Skolitsky. 9, Joshua Roberts, and 10th, Oscar Scowell. Let's give them all a big round of applause, please. Entering the ring at this time, we have our dairy feeder calf. We have 6 entries coming up in our dairy feeder calf show. We'd just like a reminder to everybody here that there's going to be a dedication ceremony for the Dan Short Memorial Thursday at 6:10 p.m. at the south end of the sheep barn.
Coming out here in your dairy division, I think the young man's red calf wins this class particularly easy. He is the heaviest muscled, he is the stoutest structured, biggest ribbed. Just a lot of good things about him. I think he's a logical place to start. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the young man's steer that comes out here in second. He's more your stereotypical. I think he's got a little bit more dairy about him. He's really long and elegant. He stays truer down that top line. You get him behind him. He's expressive in terms of his muscle. He just simply doesn't have as much in relation to my class winner, so that's why he sorts that second place spot. It gets a little bit tougher between third and fourth and where you set your priorities. I think the young lady's all-black steer is going to take a little bit more time on feed in relation to the steer that's next to her, but just in terms of being moderate, a little bit more my type and kind, a little bit more elegant, I just think he's going to, as a finished steer, I think he's just going to look better on down the road than the black and white steer that follows her. Black and white steer that follows her, big frame, deep-sided. I think he's going to finish out well. I just maybe doesn't have the eye appeal as the three that are ahead of him. Young lady's black and white one that comes out next. One that's fresh and youthful in terms of his look. He's long and extended. However, when he gets out and goes, he gets plenty coarse about that shoulder, and he wants to get underneath himself off those rear two. Young man's black and white calf that closes out the class, I think he is a little bit younger, he's a little bit smaller, but just in terms of the pieces that he brings for me today, I think with more time on feed, this one's going to be able to beat some on further on down the road, but it's really too early for this stage in the game to say so. But a really good class commercial dairy steers out here. Let's go ahead and give these exhibitors a round of applause.
Congratulations, our champion dairy feeder was exhibited by Everett Klug. Our reserve champion dairy feeder was exhibited by Bentley Gentz. In third place, we had Elizabeth Roach. In fourth place, Malcolm Spoke. Fifth, Olivia Bird. And sixth, Avery Skolitsky. That will end our feeder calf show 30 minutes from now. So that would be 12:30. We will start our market steer show. So go grab a bite to eat, go to the bathroom, all that good stuff. So we're ready to go to start that steer show in 30 minutes, 12:30, folks.
Attention beef exhibitors, please come to the arena. We now have tags, your exhibitor tags.
Good morning or good afternoon in the barns, folks. We are ready to start our market steer show. So if you are in our first classes of dairy and beef, please make your way to the Farm Progress Arena at this time so we can get things started. Our first class is an exhibition class in our beef market steer show. We have two exhibitors, both being exhibited by Piper Murfeld. Mark Nails, we would like you to report to the Farm Progress Arena, please. Mark Nails. Thank you, Terry. Entering the ring for our first class of dairy market steers, we have Malcolm Spoke, Autumn Rennock, Olivia Bird, Gracie Weichman, and Kathy Roach, our Class 1 of dairy steers. These steers weigh anywhere from 1182 to 1258.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good quality set of market animals to start off. Obviously, these two didn't quite make the weight requirement, but I think two quality animals that read with a lot of good qualities about them. I'm going to opt to use the young lady's gold heifer to go ahead and win this particular division. I think simply they're just more there, more out of that backside of that shoulder, from there on back. Get in behind her. She's a little bit more expressive in terms of her muscle, and in terms of being one of the lighter weight ones, she actually does have a good amount of condition on her in relation to the black steer that comes out second. One that comes out in second, young man does a tremendous job, good fronted, long and extended, but when you analyze this one, there's just simply not enough there, not enough muscle from that shoulder from there on back. He does hit the ground with a little bit more foot and bone than the heifer that wins, but like I said, there's just simply not enough there. A good quality class of market animals. Let's go ahead and give those two exhibitors a hand.
Entering the ring for our beef market steers is class number 2. Class number 2 should be Ian Spoke, Lexi Bird, Caden Atkins, Brody Lukey, Connor Schneider, Josh Roberts, and Megan Bartlett. In the ring on the dairy side is class number 1. Class number 2 should be on deck for our dairy side. We'd like to welcome our judges that we have here today. On our beef side, we have Tyler Tonkin. Tyler hails from Mineral Point with a calf cow background. He currently serves as an animal nutritionist. He graduated from Western Illinois. Josh Roberts, we are waiting for you for class 1 of your beef steer. Josh Roberts. Judging our dairy cattle side, our dairy beef today, we have Ron Russell, retired from UW Madison. He spent 36 years as a meat animal evaluation coach. His family is heavily involved, 4-H and FFA, and meat animal activities. This is year 28 of continuously having kids show in the meat animal industry. So let's welcome our judges with a big Dodge County welcome today, Mr. Tyler Tonkin and Mr. Ron Russell. At this time, Class 3 of our beef should be checking in at the Farm Progress Arena. Beef Class 3 should be checking in. On our dairy side, Class 2 should be checking in at this time as well. Sorry, you can just... Okay, excuse me, that should be Beef Class 2. Sorry, my mistake. Class 2 should be checking in at this time. Class 1 is in the ring. On the dairy side, Class 2 should be checking in.
All right, we're going to start with this first class, the kind of lighter weight in dairy steers. Got a nice class to start out. We range from 1,100 pounds up through into the 12 weight range, up into the upper 12s. So a nice array of steers to start the class out with. The young lady steer I'm going to start the class out with here on this end toward the center of the ring is a steer that to me balances up really nicely, really nice and level down his top, level and correct in his hip. Nice in his foot and leg structure as far as being correct in his feet and legs as he gets out there. I think he's desirable as far as the amount of cover he's got. Now, granted, I'd like to see him overall at a heavier weight. I mean, these steers are all on the lighter weight end for what we're going to optimally feed our dairy steers to, but this steer still, he's kind of close to where he needs to be in that regard, and so he's going to go ahead and lead the class out. So, young lady, if you want to take your steer and go ahead and head him out. We're going to come in next with a steer that actually probably has just a little bit more muscle, a little bit more mass. He's certainly a little bit more bold in his front end design, maybe a little bit more thickness when you get into his hip, but he's not quite as correct from a structural standpoint. May have a tick more finish when you get into him in that regard, but a really nice steer to come in second in the class. After we get done with the young lady steer, we come to the young man steer that you can go ahead and lead yours out. The young man steer is a lightweight steer in the class. He's only 1,100 pounds, but he's probably, honestly, the heaviest muscled steer in natural muscle and thickness of any of the calves in the class. Now, with that, though, because he's on the lighter weight end of the spectrum, he's the one that's kind of on the lean side. He's pretty trim. He's got a tick more finish than you necessarily expect when you first look at him. But he's just certainly got a lot of thickness, natural thickness and width and muscling down his top. Carries back into a fair amount of thickness and boldness of expression of hip when you get right behind him. The young lady steer we come in next with is a steer that again one of the heavier on the heavier end of the class in as far as what we've got to work with here. A steer that I think is close to acceptable as far as condition. He's a little bit on the trim side, but he gets off in his structure, tends to drop in his hip, and tends to be a little bit lighter and more restricted as far as the muscling he's got in expression when you get behind him. And then we finish the class with the young lady steer that's certainly the trimmest, the kind of the shallowest as far as his rib shape and his depth of flank, and just doesn't have enough cover over his ribs and all for me to move him any higher. But a nice weight, a nice set of lighter weight end steers we've got to work with in the class. Let's give them a nice round of applause.
Congratulations in Class 1 of our dairy steer class. First was exhibited by Kathy Roach, second Gracie Weichman, third Malcolm Spoke, fourth Autumn Rennock, and fifth Olivia Bird. Entering the ring at this side on the dairy side is Class 2 of dairy steers. In the ring on our beef side is our Class 1 of our beef steers. Class 2 should be checking in.
good quality class of market steers coming out here, and I have to use the young man's all black steer to go ahead and win this particular class. I think he's just kind of the combination steer. He's attractive, he's good looking, he's long down that spine. I think I call him adequate in terms of his rib shape. You get in behind him, there's enough muscle shape there. But what kind of sorts him is when he gets out on the goes. He is the best built one in this particular class. I'd maybe like to see him a little bit further along in terms of his condition, but just in terms of putting the most positives together, I think he's a logical place to start. Now the true market animal is probably coming out here in second, the young man's white one, black and white one. He actually kind of fills my hand with a thicker, fuller loin, has plenty of shape down that top. He's the deepest in terms of his center part of his body. However, it's when he's pulled to the lead that he kind of sorts that second place spot. He's a little coarse about his shoulder and a little bit short about his hip, and he wants to get underneath himself and consequently gets a little uncoordinated on the go. Young man's black or red and white steer coming out here next kind of shares a lot of similarities to the two that are ahead of him, and just in terms of his show ring presence and look. He's long, he's still got a good enough extension up front. You get in behind him there, I think he's got plenty of muscle shape. He just needs a little bit more time on feed, I think, and just a little bit more rib shape and a little bit more extension in relation to the two that are ahead of him. Young man's all red steer here, definitely the lightweight steer in this class. Like to obviously see him with a little bit more time on feed and a little bit more condition. Just in terms of just having that show ring presence though, I think he's just a logical place to go next. He's really opened up in terms of that rib shape, and it has a lot of power from behind. Young lady's caramel colored steer comes out next. By far the heaviest condition, the furthest along in terms of his markability. Full in the cod, deep ribbed, long bodied. Going to hang a nice, shapely, heavy carcass. I just think there's enough there to keep him off the bottom. Similar story with the Hereford steer that comes out next. I just think he's simply just more further along in terms of his condition. Young lady's black and white steer. Probably if he had a little bit more time on feed, he'd definitely be up towards the top of the class. However, he is one of the lighter ones in this class, and in the lightest in terms of his condition. Get him a little bit more fatter, and he moves up a lot higher within class. So let's go ahead and give that first class of market steers a round of applause.
Congratulations to Class 1 of our Beef Market Steer Show. Placing first was Caden Atkins. Second was Brody Lukey. In third was Connor Schneider. Fourth, Ian Spoke. Fifth, Megan Bartlett. Sixth, Josh Roberts. And seventh, Lexi Bird. Entering the ring at this time is class number 2 of our beef steer class. Class number 3, please make your way to check in to the Farm Progress Arena. Class 3 of beef, please check in. On the dairy side, class number 2 is being evaluated at this time. Class 3, please make your way to the arena and check in.
On the dairy side, on the dairy steer side, we've got a couple of really nice, appropriately conditioned steers to kind of lead the class out with. The young man's red and white steer. If you want to walk him out, we'll talk him as he goes. Steer just really kind of, to me, kind of leads this class off fairly handily. He's appropriately finished. He's got some thickness and some volume of muscle when you get around behind him. I think from a structural standpoint, he walks out. He's got a nice long stride to him. He's correct in his hip placement. He walks out. He's got some angle and flex to his hock, and he sets down correctly in his pasterns. To me, the steer just simply kind of wins this class fairly handily. The young lady steer that's got a bit of a digestive issue going, he got a little bloat going on him. I think you got to look past that. He's a steer that I think is close to the top steer as far as the amount of muscle expression he's got. He doesn't balance up quite as well as that steer I'm leading off the class with, but the young lady's got a nice steer that's appropriately conditioned. We're getting up into that 1,400-pound weight range. He's spot on as far as the amount of condition he's got. I think he should grade fairly readily. I think he's got a nice amount of thickness and volume of muscle when you get right down his top and back into his quarter. The young man's predominantly black steer we're going out next with. Tends to get off just a little bit in his structure, but he certainly has some muscle mass and expression when you get behind him. Tends to get a little bit straighter in his design up through his front end, but certainly the steer that to me combines the most of the best of the steers I've got remaining in the class after that. Then a young lady steer that we're going to lead out with next is a steer that, again, just tends to get off his hip. You can go ahead and lead him out. He tends to get off a little bit in his hip structure, tends to really kind of narrow up when you get right behind him. That being said, he's a deep-bodied steer. He's got some adequacy of finish over his side, over his rib cage, and down in his brisket when you get on him on a profile. He just doesn't balance up and give you that attractiveness of look of the steers that placed ahead of him. Then we're going to come in next with a young man steer that's he tends to be a little bit shallower made kind of steer. He doesn't quite have the depth of body, doesn't have the condition we've got on the steers above him to be as comfortable moving him up from a great ability standpoint, but his steer's got some adequacy as far as thickness when you get right behind him. He's got some decent thickness down his top, and he's finished through his quarter. He just tends to get a little bit lighter quartered when you get right behind him. We'll go ahead next with the young man's steer, predominantly black steer. Is again a steer that tends to be really kind of flat in his side, flat in his rib shape, a little bit narrow through his front end. For me, I just like to pull him apart, and I know that goes against selection for dairy cattle in a lot of respects, but this is a dairy steer show, so I'm gonna break that mold a little bit with what I'm looking for as far as the steers go. He just tends to be a little flatter in his design, doesn't have that boldness and a spring of rib that I'd like to have in him to move him higher in a steer class. Young man steer next out is one of the lighter steers in the class. He just, again, a little bit trim as far as the finish side goes. He could use a little bit more time on feed. A steer that balances up reasonably well, but tends to get pretty narrow in his quarter and in his hip when you get right behind him. We're going to finish the class with the young lady's market heifer that she's got in here. A heifer that, again, just tends to be on the lighter side, lighter as far as the weight class as far as the steers goes, tends to be very trim, tends to be a little bit finer and frailer in her design. So from a marketability standpoint, she just kind of tends to trail the rest of the class a little bit. But overall, a nice set of market dairy calves to work with.
Congratulations to the winners of our Class 2 of our dairy steers. First blue was exhibited by Jesse Christensen. Second blue was exhibited by Susan Roach. First red was exhibited by Robert Maher Tracy. Second red was exhibited by Cassandra Flick. First white was exhibited by Jacob Roach. Second white was exhibited by Noah Roberts. First pink was exhibited by Alan Lester. And second pink by Olivia Bird. Entering the ring on the dairy side is class number 3. Class 3 is entering the ring, class 4 dairy. Please make your way to the arena and check in. Class 4, please check in. On the beef side, Class 3 will be entering the ring shortly. Class 3 should all be checked in.
Another good quality class of steers in Class 2 here, and I opted to use the young lady's black and white steer to go ahead and win this particular class. I think he kind of sorts himself off to the top relatively easy. He's a little bit longer down his spine. You get in behind him, he's more expressive. He fills his track on a more consistent basis. You get your hands on him. He's thick and full in his loin eye area. You get your hands over his rib cage. He's carrying the most amount of condition in this particular class. Just a nice steer to go ahead and win. Now, not taking anything away from the young man's red steer coming out here in second. This one's a little bit more fresher, a little bit more youthful in his front end. He's got plenty of shape down that top. Actually, I think he hits the ground with a little bit more foot and bone than my class winner, but he is just a little bit more moderate, a little bit shorter from hooks to pins in relation to my class winner. Lengthen him up there ever so slightly and make his step a little bit longer, and he sorts to the top, but a really good steer to be sitting in second. Now, kind of the muscle steers coming out here in third. One that doesn't have a whole lot of hair like a show steer should, but you get your hands on him. He's the most expressive out of that backside of that shoulder. He's thick and full in his loin, but it's when he's pulled to the lead that he kind of shows his mistakes. He's plenty coarse about his shoulder, and he's short and round out of his hip, and when he's pulled to the lead, he gets underneath himself. Lengthen out that hip and make him more level, and he might move up into that second place spot. There's a little bit tougher decision between this white one and the black one that comes next, and simply it's just when I get my hands on him, the white steer is a little bit more market ready for me today, a little bit more cover over his rib cage, and I think he's adequate in terms of his loin eye area. I'd like to see a lot bit more muscle. He is one of the lighter muscled ones in this class, but just in terms of one that can get out and go, I think this one's pretty athletic. Young man's black steer, a really good steer to be sitting on this far down the line. You get your hands on him. I think there's some muscle shape. He hits the ground with a lot of foot and bone. However, he is one of the shallowest sided steers. He is pretty narrow in his forerib and flank. You get in behind him, I just like to see a little bit more muscle there and a little bit more in terms of his condition. 100 more pounds of feed, and this one moves up a lot higher within class. Young man steer, really nice finish steer that's got a lot of muscle. He just comes in a few more pieces. He wants to run downhill. He falls out through that chest floor, and he's pretty tight in terms of his rear flank. I like to give him a little bit more length off those rear two. Young lady steer that closes out the class, a nice deep-sided, pounds-heavy type of a steer that's going to hang a nice heavy carcass. He just doesn't have that show ring appeal. He's a little bit short and restricted off both ends of his framework. Give him a little bit more length and extension up front, and he moves up a lot higher. But a really good class of steers from top to bottom. Let's go ahead and give those exhibitors a hand.
Congratulations to our winners of our Class 2 beef market steers. First blue was exhibited by Faith Weekman. Second blue by Easton Keel. First red by Wyatt Warmka. Second red by Charlie Farron Kirscher. First white exhibited by Brandon Boyd. Second white by Caden Atkins. First pink by Kaylee Zubke. Entering the ring at this time is class number 3 of our beef market steers. Class 4 of our beef market steers, please make your way to the arena and check in. Class 4 beef market steers. In the ring at this time on our dairy side, class number 3 is in the ring. Class 4 dairy, please make your way to the arena and check in. Class 4. Class 4 beef, Allison Engen and Michael Meir, we need you to check in at the Farm Progress Arena at this time. Once again, Class 4 of dairy steers and beef steers should be checked in at this time. Class 4 for both dairy and beef should be checked in.
Really interesting class we've got on the dairy steer in. Young lady steer we're going to start the class out with, again, is one that I kind of like to lead the class out with, I guess I'll say pretty handily from a structural correctness standpoint. The steers, I mean, he's put together reasonably well. He's kind of toes pointed front, hocks back. Just from a structure standpoint, he moves around the ring with a fair amount of ease. That being said, he's also a level top, level designed, straight in his line steer that's got some muscle mass and thickness down his top. Got a decent hip in him to work with, and I think he's desirable as far as the amount of finish he's got. So a steer that just puts together a lot of pieces really well. Young man steer we've got in second is one that is intriguing. He's intriguing because he is easily the heaviest muscled steer in the class. He's certainly got more thickness and volume of mass down his top. He's a bigger hip steer. He does tend to drop in his pin placement some, and in some ways he's a little bit harder or a little bit trimmer as far as his finish right down his side. If he carried a little more finish, he'd be really exciting. But to me, I just like to get him carrying a little bit more cover today, but he's certainly a heavy muscled steer that probably boasts the most muscularity of any steer we've had in the show today. Just a lot of thickness to his top and to his quarter when he's walking away from you. Just, as far as dairy steers go, he's kind of an extraordinary individual. Young man steer I got coming out next was one that probably resembles our top steer a little bit better from a design standpoint. Level top, level hip, level in his pin placement, pretty correct as far as his feet and legs go. I mean, he gets around, he's got a nice long stride to him, he's got some width of base, and he's desirable as far as the amount of cover, and I think he'll work well for us from a structure standpoint as well as a carcass desirability. The young man steer that comes out next is one that's kind of giving the young man a hard time. He's staying with it and doing a really nice job. Steer tends to be a little bit thinner as far as the cover he's got down his side and in his brisket when you get right in front of him and when you get behind him and look down into his twist. I think he's got more muscle than the other steers we've got to work with in the class, and so that's why I went ahead and moved him into this position. He just tends to be a little bit on the trimmer side. I'd like to put just a little bit more cover on him to be more comfortable to move him a little bit higher in the class, but a steer that balances up reasonably well, and the young man's doing a nice job of sticking with him. Young lady steer we've got leading out next is one, again, the next couple of steers just tend to be a little bit on the trimmer side, not quite that desirability of finish as far as where we want him to be for being in this 1,400-pound range, and I'd like for him to carry just a tick more cover on him at this stage of the game to be comfortable with him, to move him any higher, to maybe him get him up into a premium choice grade as far as carcass desirability, but that steer going out, he's reasonably straight in his lines and good in his hip. Then the young man steer that's again, he doesn't want to move very much, but he does. The young man sticking with it and doing a nice job. Another steer tends to get really kind of upright in his frame and kind of straight in his shoulder design. I'd like to kind of change him in that regard. And again, he's a little bit too trim for me in this particular class at that weight. I just like to put a little more cover. He's a little bit flatter in his design like some of the steers in the last class as well. And then we'll complete the class with the young lady steer. Again, a steer that you like on the profile. I'd like to maybe deepen him out, just bring him a little farther along, maybe pull him apart up through his front end design, maybe widen him out, make him a little bit heavier structured as he goes away from us, and he could move up higher. But all in all, a nice set of 14 weight steers to work with. Let's give those young people a round of applause.
Congratulations to the winners of our dairy steer. Class 3 winners. First blue was exhibited by Cassandra Fick. Second blue was exhibited by Jackson Christensen. First red was exhibited by Brandon Baring. Second red, Malcolm Spoke. First white was exhibited by Kathy Roach. Second white exhibited by Emmett Hopp. First pink by Mackenzie Leppel. Coming in the ring at this for our dairy side is Class 4. Class 5 dairy steers, please get on deck.
Gotta hide as far over here. A really good another class of steers out here, and I think between the two, the white one and the black one, I think those two kind of sort themselves out from the rest, and I think there's some give and take between the two of them. I opted to go with a little of muscle and added performance of the black steer. I simply think there's just more shape down that top and from behind. He hits the ground with a little bit more foot and bone. Does he balance up as nicely as the one that comes out here in second? No, but just in terms of a true quality, true market animal, yeah, I think he's comfortable enough when he's pulled to the lead. I think he's a good place to start. Young lady's white steer, one that you got to really appreciate as you study him from the profile. He stays truer down that top line. He's more adequate and I think a little bit more athletic when he's pulled to the lead. But when you analyze him from a muscling standpoint, he is one of the lighter muscled ones in this particular class, and he should be able to float around the ring in relation to his contemporaries. But just one that's athletic, sound, and good looking, yet I think far enough along in terms of his condition. I think he's a good steer to be sitting in second. Gets a little bit tougher decision for third and fourth, and you could trade off either way. I think there's just a little bit more muscle shape in this mostly black steer. He fills my hand with a thicker, fuller loin. He's got more shape on that backside of that shoulder. However, he is a little bit smaller footed. He's not as adequate when he gets out on the go. He's a little short striding. I like to give him a little bit more foot and bone to match all that added shape up high. And that's what I like about the young lady's belted steer that comes out next. One that on the standstill, I thought he was going to move up higher within class. He's deep-sided. He's still got some length and extension up front. He hits the ground with a lot of foot and bone. It's when you get your hands on him, he kind of disappoints you there, not as thick and full in his loin, not as expressive behind that shoulder, and also when he's pulled to the lead, he just doesn't float around the ring as well as I would like. Young man steer coming out next. One you got to really appreciate. His silhouette's nice. He's deep-sided. He paints a pretty picture, but when he gets out on the go, he's plenty tight and narrow off both ends of his framework, and he is one of the lighter muscled ones in this particular class. You get your hands on him there, plenty in terms of condition, but just simply not enough there. Young lady steer, definitely that closes out the class. Deep-sided, long body, going to hang a nice heavy carcass. In relation to his contemporaries, he's the lightest muscled, frailest made at the ground, but a really good class from top to bottom. Let's go ahead and give those exhibitors a hand.
Congratulations to the winners of our Class 3 beef steers. First blue was exhibited by Alex Lukey. Second blue was exhibited by Megan Shelfeffer. First red was exhibited by Wyatt Warmka. Second red by Natalie Gibbs. First white by Hayden Gibbs. Second white by Megan Bartlett. And first pink exhibited by... Was there another? And second white by Megan Bartlett. Entering the ring at this time on our beef side is Class 4. Class 4 should be entering the ring. Class number 5 from our beef side, please check in. Get to the Farm Progress Arena and check in Class 5 from the beef side. On the dairy side, Class 4 is in the ring. At this time, Class 5 should be checked in.
a really good quality set of black steers that sort themselves off to the top. I opted to go with the young man to go ahead and win. I think there's simply just more there. He's got more shape behind that shoulder, down that top, into that thicker hip. He hits the ground with a little bit more foot and bone. He's got a nice look from the profile. I'd maybe like to give him a little bit more extension, but that's getting pretty nitpicky. But when he gets out on the go, I think he's the most athletic off both ends of his framework, and I think he's a good logical place to start. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the young lady's black steer that comes out here in second. One that when you study him from the profile, he paints just as good a picture, if not better, than my class winner. He's long and level down that top. He's long in his pin set. He's deep-sided. He's actually got more length and extension up front. He's smoother about his shoulder, but when you get in behind him, they're just simply not enough there. Get a little bit more muscle expression in that lower 1/3, and you give my classmate a run for his money. However, when he is pulled to the lead, he is a little bit wider coming and going than my class winner, but a really good pair of steers nonetheless. Gets a little bit tougher decision, but just in terms of this red and white steer, they're just simply more there. He's more rib cage, more top, more muscle shape, and I just think a little bit further along in terms of his condition. And the two that kind of close out the class, the young lady just simply has a little bit more finish, a little bit more market ready for me today. But a really good class, so let's go give those exhibitors a round of applause.
Congratulations to our winners of our Class 4 Beef. First blue is exhibited by Gavin Lukey. Second blue by Addison Lukey. First red was exhibited by Colin Wagner. Second red, Allison Engen. First white was Michael Meir. Class 4 has left the ring. Class 5 is entering the ring on the beef side. Class 6 of beef, please make your way to the Farm Progress Arena.
I have no doubt. I was just telling Tyler, I thought maybe with the final draft, when we get to the final rounds, he could pick the champion dairy, I'd pick the champion beef. We just mix it up for fun. I don't know, we might have some objections some places. So anyway, I'm going to lead out this class. And again, we're in a nice set of solid 14-weight steers. A young man steer, again, is one of those that I think leads off the class fairly handily. I think he balances up really nicely. I think he's got nice width and volume and muscle down his top. I think from a structural standpoint, he moves out with a nice ease of movement. He's a good long-strided steer, correcting his hock when you get behind him and correcting his hip. And so I think he just kind of balances those traits we look for. He's got it from a structure standpoint. He's got it from a muscle standpoint, carcass desirability, the whole 9 yards. So I think to me, he wins this class fairly handily. The young lady steer that comes out next is a nice close second, though. Again, a steer that just puts together a lot of things really well. Maybe doesn't quite have some of that look or that show ring appeal as a class winner, but a steer that really, again, balances up nicely. Nice level, nice structured steer, good thick, big quarter, deep-bodied steer, correct in his finish. Kind of just does his job well as a dairy steer, and she's done a nice job with him. Young man steer that goes out next, we're going to go ahead and lead him out, young man. A steer that just kind of gives up a little bit as far as from a structural desirability to the steers that place ahead of him. Gets a little narrower in his hip when you get right behind him. Has a little less muscle to work with, a little bit flatter in his shape. Young lady's white steer that we have going out is, again, one that's a little bit intriguing, a little bit shallower in his body type and design, a little bit leaner and trimmer in his design. He certainly has that desirability of muscling. I'd like to see him have a little bit more cover, a little bit more fat cover on him all the way through to place a little bit higher. But I think from a cutability standpoint, the steer will do very nice for a nice, dairy steer class. But again, I think from an overall desirability, he could use a little more finish to advance in the class some. And I'd like to deepen him up a little bit just to make him balance out better. Young man steer going out next is one that, again, kind of does that. He balances up a little bit better. He deepens out a little bit through his front end. He's certainly desirable as far as the amount of cover he's got on him. Just a little lighter quartered, a little upright in his pasterns when he's going away from you. In fact, that's kind of a common theme in these steers I've got going down. They all tend to get a little upright in their pasterns, certainly in their rear pasterns as they're on the move. Don't quite move out with that structural integrity that we'd like to see. Young lady's white steer we're going to take out, or predominantly white steer we're going to take out, is again one of those that gets a little flat in his shoulder, a little flat in his rib shape and design. I'd like to thicken him up and widen him out in his base when he moves toward you and goes away as well. The young man's predominantly black steer is, again, kind of like that. Does not quite have the muscle of the steer that placed ahead of him in class. Tends to go a bit lighter in his quarter, a little tighter in his flank. just doesn't quite have the overall mass and design. And then we complete the class with the young man's predominantly white steer that just tends to be kind of a little unbalanced. He's a little heavy fronted, a little light from the quarter when you get right behind him, a little shallow in his flank, and just kind of gets off in his structure when he's on the move and a little straight through his shoulder. So it's kind of why I went ahead and moved him to the bottom. But again, as far as a 14 weight set of steers, they all kind of did the job really pretty well. They're right where they need to be from a finish standpoint and should do very well for these young people.
Congratulations to the winners of our Class 4 dairy steers. First blue, exhibited by Ian Spoke. Second blue, Susan Roach. First red, exhibited by First red, exhibited by Coy Leppel. Second red by Marissa Spoke. First white, exhibited by Kaden Leppel. Second white by Mackenzie Leppel. First pink, exhibited by Ethan Leppel. Second pink, Casey Salmi. Entering the ring at this time, we have Class 5 of our dairy steers. Class 6 dairy steers, please make your way to the arena and check in. Class 6 of our beef steers should be checking in at this time. Class 6 of our beef steers, please check in. And Class 6 of our dairy steers, please check in. Just a reminder that Voight Farm Sales have an exhibitor gift for all of our livestock exhibitors. Please step in by Voight Farm Sales to pick that up and make sure you say thanks. This is a reminder, Class 6 of our beef steers and Class 6 of our dairy steers should be checking in at the Farm Progress Arena at this time.
another quality class. Young man out in the center of the ring. I think his steer wins relatively easy in my mind. Probably the most fault-free. Is he perfect? No, but he is by far the heaviest muscled, big-ribbed, good structured one that I just think he kind of sorts himself off in relation to his contemporaries. It's a little bit tougher decision for second and third, I think. I have to go with the young lady here to go in second, just in terms of her steer being able to hold himself together. He stays truer down his spine, a little bit longer from hooks to pins. I think he's adequate in terms of his rib cage. You get in behind him, he's definitely not as expressive as the steer that comes out here in third, but it's when he's pulled to the lead that I think he stays as that second place spot, as he just kind of holds himself together a little bit better. Steer that comes out in third, definitely the big rib, stout hip steer within this class. He's just a little bit shorter bodied, a little bit smaller frame type, get a little bit shorter off both ends of his framework, square him up from behind, and he moves up a lot higher within class. And then I'm going to follow up the young man with the Hereford steer here next. One that just practical, easy feeding type. He just offers a little bit more foot and bone. He had a little bit more show ring presence than the three next steers that kind of close out the class. The red steer that comes out next, long-bodied, good ribbed, good structured. He just maybe doesn't have as enough muscle shape as in relation to his contemporaries. I do like him, though, for his freshness standpoint. Being this heavy and this big, he's still fresh and youthful, so I got to commend him for that. And the two that kind of close out the class, I think the young lady here just steers a little bit more further along in terms of a little bit more terminal end product, but a really good class from top to bottom, so let's go ahead and give those exhibitors a hand.
Congratulations to the winners of our Class 5 beef steers. First blue was exhibited by Caleb Weekman, second blue by Madison Wagner, first red by Colin Wagner, second red by Michael Meir, first white by Wyatt Stoll, second white by Hannah Bartlett, first pink by Allison Ingen. Entering the ring at this time is our Class 6, our final beef class of the day. Class 6 should be entering the ring at this time. Class 6 of our dairy should be checked in. Once again, our judges have been working really hard out in that ring today. Let's do a big round of applause for our judges today, Mr. Tyler Tonkin from Mineral Point, Tyler has a cow-calf background. He currently serves as an animal nutritionist and graduated from Western Illinois University. On our dairy side, we have our retired Dr. Ron Russell. He was with UW for 36 years as a meat evaluation coach. His family has been heavily involved in 4-H and meat animal activities over the years, and he just said this marked 28 years of continuously having kids showing livestock. So let's give our judges a huge Dodge County welcome today, Ron Russell and Tyler Tonkin.
Okay, so we're getting up again into the upper end of the weight class on these steers. We're into the 15 weights here. Pretty consistently, got a couple maybe a little shy, but they're pretty much the 1,500-pound steers, all spot on as far as the amount of condition and the cover they've got. You know, that's certainly not a factor we have to be concerned with. The young man steer we're going to lead the class out with, this red and white steer, is just one that really excels the class as far as thickness and boldness of expression and muscle. He's got some width and some width of structure. He's heavy boned. He's correct in his structure. And he's just kind of a unique steer to go ahead and use to win the class. And so we're going to go ahead and use him to start this out. Just one that puts together a lot of things very well as far as body type and design and thickness. Just a pretty unique steer. Young man steer going out second. I think we need to check the suspension on this steer. He's got a lot of up and down movement in him. I don't know if you've noticed that. I think we need to check his shocks or something like that. But the young man's doing a nice job of staying with him. Steer really balances up really well. He's level top, level hip, correct in his feet and leg structure. He balances up nicely as far as his body goes as well. He's reasonably thick down his top and back into his quarter, and I think belongs in the second place in this class fairly handily. Young man steer coming out next is another one that I think you have to appreciate as far as the thickness and the volume of muscle he's got. He's correct as far as condition-wise. Again, nothing in here overdone or underdone. They're spot on as far as where they need to be from a balance and a finish standpoint. He just doesn't quite have the muscle of the two steers that placed ahead of him in the class. The young lady steer coming out next is one that tends to give up just a little bit as far as from a structural standpoint. When you get really right behind him, it tends to narrow up in his pin placement and when I get back into his hip design a little bit, but one has certainly got some adequacy and desirability as far as thickness down his top and carrying back into a quarter. It just doesn't quite complete the picture the way the steer's ahead of him. Young man steer going out next is probably one of the heavier conditioned steers in the class. And I think he tends to get a little bit lighter muscle when you get right behind him and study him in his hip and in his quarter. I think he tends to get a little bit flatter up through his front end. But as far as grade ability and quality grade potential, if we're going to think about the steers from that angle, this steer's certainly got a lot of potential to move up in that category as one of the heavier conditioned steers in the class. Young man steer going out next is again one that's a little bit more maybe like the steers before the last one. He's desirable as far as the amount of condition he's got, just tends to get a little bit flatter in his design, flatter in his rib shape and flatter in his quarter as he comes at you and goes away from you. Same story with the young lady steer that's going to come out next. One that just tends to be a little bit, one of the larger frame type steers in there. I mean, he is a heavier weight steer. He carries that weight well. He just tends to get a little bit flatter in his shape and design, and I'd just like to change that about him. The young man steer we're going to complete the class with is one of the kind of the flatter design steers that we've got to work with in the class. You do kind of like him on his profile when you get right down his top and into his hip, but he just really, to me, narrows up too much when I get right behind him and study him through his quarter. I just like to give him a little bit more muscle mass and dimension to work with in that regard. But again, a really nice set of 15-weight dairy steers.
Congratulations to the winners of our Class 5 dairy steers. First blue was exhibited by Caleb Weekman. Second blue by Caden Leppel. First red was exhibited by Coy Leppel. Second red by Allison Roberts. First white was exhibited by Connor Schneider. Second white by Brody Bering. First pink by Marissa Spoke. And second pink by Jacob Roach. Entering the ring at this time is Class 6 of our dairy steers. Class 7 should be checking in. Once again, Class 6 is entering the ring for dairy steers. Class 7 of dairy steers, please check in.
a high quality class closing out your market beef division. You get some heavyweight steers out here that kind of get a little past 12 o'clock in terms of condition, but I think this young lady's white steer sorts himself off from the rest of the class relatively easy, not only for being the biggest knothead, but just still being the freshest, the best looking, get it out and go. He's still got that show ring presence, yet he's got a lot of marbling, a lot of condition, and a lot of muscle. A nice logical steer to start. Just as easy as it was to her to find that first place spot, I thought it was for this young lady to come out here in second. One that when she gets out and goes, I think he's sound enough off both ends of his framework. He stays true down that top line. You get in behind him, I think he's expressive enough in terms of his muscle shape. He might not have that show ring presence in relation to my class winner, clean him up through that front end, but just one that's stays together, stays true down that top, yet has some market quality about him. I think he's a comfortable place to be in that second hole. A young man steer coming out next, one that's probably got a little bit more muscle shape out of that backside of that shoulder and through his loin area, but it's when he gets out and goes, he comes in a few more pieces. He unhinges behind that shoulder, gets a little weak in his top, and gets round out of his hip. You fix him in those places, and you might be able to move him up into that second place spot, but for me today, he's just not sound enough. Young man's black and white steer coming out here next. One that doesn't blow you away in any one area. He's a practical, easy feeding type. I just like to give him a little bit more muscle shape from behind and down that top, and just maybe clean him up through that front end. The next couple steers that kind of close out the class, it's just simply from a muscling and conditioning standpoint. You get the young lady here coming out next. I think he just offers a little bit more in terms of that end quality market value in relation to his contemporaries, and that stays from 2 on out. The young man that closes out the class, definitely the big scale, big frame type of a steer, but just in terms of his condition, I still think there's simply not enough there in relation to his contemporaries, but a really good class from top to bottom to end your market steers. Let's go ahead and give those exhibitors a hand.
Just a reminder for all of our exhibitors, we will follow with showmanship after the naming of our champions. We'll probably take a quick break, and then we'll go right into our showmanship classes. And as we're talking about showmanship, folks, we want to remind you that we'll be starting with our senior showman, okay? We're starting with our oldest and working to our youngest. And again, that will be starting right after we're naming our champions, shortly after naming our champions. Okay, we have another update, folks. 20 minutes after the naming of the champion, we will start with senior showmanship. So ignore what I said about a minute ago. Showmanship will start 20 minutes after we name our champions. 20 minutes, and again, starting with our senior showmanship and working with our youngest.
We're up into our 15 weight steers here across the board. Young lady steer we're going to start the class out with is, again, one that's kind of unique as far as what he brings to the table for us. Certainly go ahead and lead him out. He's certainly got some thickness and mass down his top, but a lot of thickness and muscle in his quarter. Doesn't deepen out like some of the other steers, but as far as completing the package, as far as carcass desirability, he certainly does the job well, and he's reasonably correct at the same time. Young man steer I'm coming out next with, I think, is a steer that balances up really, really well. I mean, I like his design from his structure down his top and back into his hip. I think that he's reasonably thick in his quarter when he goes away from me. I like his body depth and volume that he has to work with to go ahead and come in second in this class. Young man steer that comes in third is one that tends to get a little bit weaker in his top and tends to get off just a little bit in his hip. He, as well as the steer that stands fourth, are a couple that tend to give up a little bit as far as that overall look desirability, but I think there are a couple of the steers that complete the picture pretty well. That third place steer is one that I think has an advantage on muscle and mass as he goes away from us in the class. Then the young man steer that's right now giving us a bit of an issue is one that I think, again, does a nice job as far as having a lot of desirability to him. He's reasonably thick. He's got some volume and capacity to work with, and so I think he's a nice steer to have placed fourth in the class. We'll kind of get him going. Let's go ahead and take the red steer, and maybe he'll want to follow the red steer out. We're going to take the red steer out next. This is a steer that tends to be a little heavier conditioned. I think is going to move up in that quality grade spectrum. Maybe doesn't quite have the muscle to complement him like some of the other steers do in the class, and that's why I went ahead and moved him down in the class. But I think from a quality standpoint and desirability of finish and the way this young man's fed him and prepared him, he's done a really nice job. Then the young man's black and white steer we're going to go out with next is one that just tends to get a little bit flatter, a little bit narrower when he comes at you and goes away. Just that he's a little bit lighter bone, a little bit frailer in his makeup and design. Young man's predominantly white steer is one that just tends to get a little thinner, a little frailer made in his bone work, and just doesn't have the cover we'd like to put on him, and tends to get a little flatter and a little shapeless when he goes away from you. Young lady steer that completes the class is one that certainly is one of the larger, heavier steers in the class, but he's one that's just really upright in his frame and upright in his front shoulder. He'll be a little bit straight in his design. I'd like to change him from a structural standpoint, make him more correct on the move, but a steer that certainly fed well and did a good job for the young lady in getting to the fair.
Congratulations to the winners of our Dairy Market Steer class, number 6. First blue was exhibited by Gracie Weekman. Second blue by Alan Lester. First red by Brandon Baring. Second red, Brody Baring. First white, Everett Klug. Second white, Ethan Leppel. First pink, Noah Roberts. Second pink, Paige Lester. Entering the ring at this time is class number 7 of our dairy steers. Class 8 of our dairy steers, please check into the Farm Progress Arena at this time. Attention to all of our exhibitors. If you're interested in signing up for Showmanship, you can do it on the table right behind us at the announcer's stand. So please come up and sign up for the appropriate class, please.
Well, when they say heavyweight class, they're not kidding. All these calves are over 1,600 pounds, certainly on the heavy side. All these steers are certainly desirable as far as the condition. We've got some ebb and flow in them, of course, and so certainly some, a little bit of variation as far as design and structural integrity and the like. Going to lead out with the young ladies, a red and white steer here, one that again certainly excels the class as far as muscle shape and dimension, wide down his top, thick in his quarter. Moves out from a pretty correct standpoint as far as feet and leg structure. I like the way he lands when he moves away from you. Just kind of puts it together, balances up fairly nicely. The young man's predominantly black steer we got coming out next. One that tends to get just a little bit upright in his front design, but I think he's acceptable in that regard, but I think he excels the rest of the class as far as his shape and dimension, as far as mass and muscle goes. I would like to correct him a little bit in his feet and leg design as far as where he sets down, but again, I think from a carcass desirability standpoint and everything else he does, I think he does it reasonably well. The young ladies, steer again, kind of like the one she had in the last class. Certainly one's a little bit bigger on the scale side of things, a little bit larger frame. This steer certainly is a little bit more desirable as far as what he's got as far as body shape and dimension. I think he's a little bit more correct than the steer she had in the other class. I certainly like the way he moves. I'd like to thicken him up, of course, when he gets away from me. Certainly when we get into this 16 weight class. But again, a really nice steer that balances up reasonably well. Young lady steer we've got going out next is one that I think is, maybe among the heavier conditioned calves in the class. He tends to get a little bit lighter and frailer, a little thinner as far as the muscle shape and dimension. When he goes away from you, tends to drop in his pin set, gets off a little bit in his structure from that standpoint. Young man's black steer is one that, again, from a structure standpoint, I just like to correct him in the way he sets down his rear. Got a little swelling in that left rear hock that I wish was a little bit different. I'm going to guess that's, just again, a little bit of a structural challenge he's got, that he builds up a little fluid in there. I'd like to give him a little more shape and dimension to his quarter as he moves away from me as well. We're going to complete with the young man with the red and white calf. Again, big steer at that weight. I'd kind of expect him to have a little bit more finish and cover than he's got on him, but he's certainly adequate and desirable in that regard. Doesn't quite balance up as well as some of the other calves in the class. So we finished the class with a steer that really could place higher in a different kind of class. Really nice set of heavyweight steers. Let's give those young people a round of applause, please.
Congratulations to the winners of our Class 7 dairy steers. First blue was exhibited by Faith Weekman. Second blue by Jackson Christensen. First red was exhibited by Paige Lester. Second red by Autumn Rennock. First white, Jesse Christensen, and second white, Everett Klug. Entering the ring at this time is Class 8 of our dairy steers. Immediately following the end of our Class 8 dairy steers, we'll be going into the naming of our Champion Beefsteer. So once again, after we finish this last dairy steer class, we will be moving into the naming of our Champion Beefsteer. So the steers that we're looking for from Class 1 would be Caden Atkins, from Class 2, Faith Weekman, from Class 3, Alex Lukey, from Class 4, Gavin Lukey, from Class 5, Caleb Weekman, and from Class 6, Megan Schelfeffer. Once again, it's a reminder to all of our exhibitors, we certainly would like to see you participate in our showmanship classes. Showmanship classes will start 20 minutes after the end of naming of our champions. To sign up for showmanship, please come to the table behind the announcer stand so we can get you signed up, please.
So I asked the young man with his steer that's being a little rambunctious, just keep him over there. We've got him placed in class. Again, I want to commend these young people on these steers. The steers aren't necessarily wanting to behave. They just soon be laying in a stall back in the barn and not messing with this. It is a hot afternoon, but you got upper 17 and 1,800 pound steers in here. So these are big creatures for these young people to hang on to, and I want to give them credit for doing that. It's when you got a calf that doesn't want to behave, it's kind of hard to hang on to them. The top pair in this class is really pretty close and pretty intriguing in my mind. I think the young lady steer we're going to go ahead and use to win the class is one that just kind of wins a little bit as far as his overall muscle and design he's got to work with. Yes, he tends to get up in his tail head. If that bothers you, you can criticize that, but he really balances up pretty well outside of that. He's a thick-made, big-bodied steer, really thick and correct from a feet and leg design when you get behind him. So I think he kind of needs to win the class. The young man steer that comes out next is the one that, again, I just think you have to like in a lot of ways. I think he balances up really nicely, a really smooth-made steer, correct in his shoulder, reasonably correct when you get right behind him. Probably a little square and better design in his hip structure than the steer that finished just ahead of him in class. Young man steer that comes in third is one that I really like, especially from the front half of that steer. I think he's really good in his front end design and really good in his feet and leg structure up front. He does tend to narrow up a little bit when we get behind him and shallows up in his flank. I'd like to balance him out a little bit in that regard. But again, I think a steer that kind of fits with that top three fairly handily. The young man steer over on the wall is going to be our fourth place steer in this class. And again, they've had a tough time getting that steer to kind of stay with the program in here. But he's just a balanced, well-made steer. I just don't want anybody to get hurt in here. But again, a steer that you have to appreciate as far as the thickness. I kind of gave him a hard time. I said, we're going to put your athletic steer fourth place in the class. The steer is certainly mobile. He's certainly correct from a feet and leg structure standpoint. Certainly on the big side, up in that 18 weight range, and he just doesn't really want to be here. But he's a really nice, complete steer to use in the class. Young man's next steer, this predominantly white steer we're going to use for fifth in the class, is one, again, I think maybe tends to get a little bit off in his structure when we get behind him, tends to narrow up a little bit, and that's why we went ahead and dropped him down a little ways. The young man steer, the young man in the blue shirt, he's going to be seventh in the class, or supposed to be a fourth, fifth, sixth in class. He's going to be the next place in this class. Tends to get off in his top and narrows up when you get right behind him. He gets a little fairly bait in his bone work, and so that's why I went ahead and moved him down in class. We complete the class with the young lady's predominantly white steer. One that, again, I appreciate the finish. I appreciate the weight. She's got that, too. An excellent job in preparing this steer to have him ready to go to the fair. He just kind of gets outdone in this class as far as being just a little frailer made, a little more upright from a structural standpoint and integrity standpoint. Just doesn't quite have enough going with him to compete with the steers that placed higher in the class. But again, my commendations to the young people bringing these heavyweight steers for you. Nice job of getting those cattle fed and prepared.
Congratulations to the winners of our Class 8 of our dairy steers. First blue was exhibited by Hudson Henschel Parr. Second blue by Hudson Henschel Parr. First red was exhibited by Evan Weir. Second red by Wesley Damrow. First white by Evan Weir. And second white by Robert Maher Tracy.
All right, last night we had a fitting contest for the Beef Kids, and we got a couple of awards for them. Faith and Caleb Weekman were the only two involved. We've got these beautiful chairs that we're giving out to each of the participants. The winner will get a $50 gift certificate for Profiles. Profiles was nice enough to donate the stitching, and Josh Schmidt and myself, Andy Neff, were exhibitors and sponsors for the contest. Thank you for your participation, kids.
All right, at this time, we are going to name the Champion Beefsteer of the 2021 Dodge County Fair. From Class 1 today, we have Caden Atkins with an 1,133-pound steer. From Class 2, we have Faith Weekman with a 1,273-pound steer. From Class 3, we have Alex Lukey with a 1,325-pound steer. From Class 4, we have Gavin Lukey with a 1,338-pound steer. From Class 5, Caleb Weekman with a 1,386-pound steer. And from Class 6, Megan Shelfepper with a 1,451-pound steer. Let's give these exhibitors a huge Dodge County round of applause. All right, our judges request for the dairy side of things today. Our judges requested both the champion and reserve, or the first and second blues in each class, to please come to the arena and check in. So for Class 1, we're going to need Kathy Roach and Gracie Weekman. From Class 2, we need Jessie Christensen and Susan Roach. From Class 3, we're going to need Cassandra Fick and Jackson Christensen. From Class 4, we need Ian Spoke and Susan Roach. From Class 5, we need Caleb Weekman and Caden Leppel. From Class 6, we need Gracie Weekman and Alan Lester. From Class 7, we need Faith Weekman and Jackson Christensen. And from Class 8, Hudson Henschel-Parr, we need both of your steers. So once again, for the dairy side, our judges requested the first and second blues from each of those classes.
I guess before I start talking your final drive, let's go ahead and give all these exhibitors a round of applause. As I come out here and I analyze these animals, I think that all these steers out here represent your county really well. This is probably, I've had a quiet year this year. I've maybe only done 6 shows this summer, but I think your top end here could compete with most of the other counties that I've done so far this year. So I commend this county and all your showmen out here for that. I think it's kind of funny that we get out here and I'm standing next to Ron Russell and I'm talking these animals. 15 years ago in 4-H, I had to give him a set of reasons and everything when we were doing 4-H judging, and I was just nervous as heck. But I think it's came a long way since then. I'm a little bit more comfortable out here, a little bit schooling behind me, being in the beef industry a little bit longer. So I hope you guys agree with me on the quality of steers out here and the 6 ones that I have out here. I think that they all offer a lot of good things about them. They all won their classes. They kind of stood out from each other. I'll start with the class 1 out here out of the lightweights. One that he had to beat a little bit heavier weighted one that had maybe a little bit more muscle, a little bit more rib shape, but just his ability to get out and go. He's fresh, he's youthful, like a lightweight should be. He meets his step on a consistent basis and just floats around the ring. I just think he just maybe needs a little bit more time on feet, another 100, another 200 pounds in relation to his contemporaries. You get the white-legged steer out of here out of class 2, one that was really, really heavy muscled, had to beat a really nice red steer in particular class, probably one of the deeper classes as of quality from top to bottom as we've had so far today. You get your hands on him. He doesn't disappoint you, especially for how light he is. He's very, really expressive in terms of that muscle and muscle shape down that top and from behind. Yeah, I think he goes around the ring comfortably enough. Is he perfect? No. Would I clean him up through his front end? Yes. Young man coming out of class 3, one just on a terminal cutability standpoint. He offered the most shape behind that shoulder, that most muscle from behind. You get out and go. I thought he was sound enough. Does he come in a few pieces? Yes, he does. He gets a little weak behind that shoulder, a little weak in his spine, and gets underneath himself. But in relation to that class, I thought he beat that white steer with just a little bit more muscle, a little bit more sheer power. Young man out of class 4, one that I thought had to beat a really nice steer that sat in second, one that was maybe a little bit bigger framed, a little bit lighter muscled, but this one I thought won that class relatively easy. He's one of the fault-free steers out here. He's really attractive. He gets out and goes. Adequate in terms of his muscle. He's right where you need to be in terms of his condition, but what kind of separates him is when he's pulled to the lead. I think he fills his track on a most consistent basis and is the most athletic. You get the steer out of the 5th class, one that just I think was maybe one of the weaker classes in terms of depth, but that quality steer, he silhouettes well, he's long and extended, he's upright at the top side of that shoulder, he's got plenty of shape down that top and from behind, yet he's got that nice hook and angle to that hock and hind leg and fills his track on a consistent basis. However, he does get a little round out of his hip. I like him to lengthen him up from hip, from dock to pins, give him a little bit more length and extension, and fix that ever so slightly. And then you got the young lady Charlotte influence steer for being 1480 or whatever she told me. This one's still freshful. He's still youthful. He might be a little past 12 o'clock, but for 1,400 pounds, he carries it well in a nice athletic frame with plenty of muscle shape. And I thought he won that class relatively easy. I think you guys have an idea how I'm going to place these. I'm going to go out and shake your hand at your champion steer. You get out here for a reserve, and I think it gets a little bit tougher decision in my mind. You get your second place one out here, and I said in class, one that you really got to appreciate from a profiling standpoint. Long, level, good design, long and extended through that front end. That assembly, shoulders smooth. He's deep-sided. You get in behind him, though, is where he kind of disappoints you, as he is one of the lighter muscled ones out of here in the final drive, but just one that looks as painted pretty as that you can be from the profile. But I think that there's one that follows my Champion a little bit more adequately just in terms of foot and bone size, muscle, hip, look and design. The young lady out of Class 2 is going to go ahead and be a reserve.
Congratulations, our Champion Beefsteer today was exhibited by Gavin Lukey. Our reserve Champion Beefsteer by Faith Weekman. So once again, our Champion Beefsteer was exhibited by Gavin Lukey, our reserve champion by Faith Weekman. Our third overall was exhibited by Addison Lukey, and our fourth overall, Caleb Weekman. Congratulations to our beef exhibitors. At this time, we'll now be bringing in our dairy steers. Our judges requested both our first and second place blues from each class should please come into the Farm Progress Arena. One more reminder, please get signed up for Showmanship, folks. There are sign-up sheets right behind the announcer stand, so please make sure you finish up your day strong and participate in Showmanship.
I'd like to take a moment and thank Terry Costello for doing the announcing for us this year. She does a great job, so thank you, Terry.
Just a reminder, I know you guys were in the ring, but Caleb, Grace, and Faith Weekman, we do need your dairy steers. Hopefully somebody's helping you out there. We know you're just in the ring, but let's get those dairy steers out here, please.
So when we get to, I get the privilege of being able to pick your dairy steers here, and I certainly appreciate that. You know, some of us talk about this once in a while. There are not that many people that do a lot more time spending, you know, judging dairy steers and things like that. When we do beef cattle, typically what we'll refer to as beef breeds, there's a lot of judges that just soon not have to not look at dairy steers because they just don't really think of them in that category. They don't recognize the presence of the dairy industry and its contribution to the food supply. And so I want you to know that I do. I know that Tyler does. It is significant, and I've you know, appreciated and complimented Dodge County for a number of years on having certainly I think one of the stronger dairy steer shows, at least at a county level, that we've got in the state. It's certainly one of the strongest that I've ever had the privilege of looking at and looking through. The other thing I want to say is it is an absolute privilege on my part to be able to judge in a ring alongside Tyler. I've known Tyler for a number of years. As he said, he kind of dated me a little bit on that when he referred to a while ago when I had the privilege of listening to him give reasons in youth judging contests. And let me tell you, he was usually one of the ones that you enjoyed listening to. So you got a treat today as well to be able to listen to Tyler explain his reasons and his rationale, and I appreciate the opportunity to judge in a ring alongside Tyler. So now back to the dairy steers. Again, I hope, if nothing else, I hope you see an element of some level of consistency in the type and the kinds. We were talking about this a little bit again in the background, as you know, so as far as some of the different breeds that are encompassed under the dairy steer heading, and so some of that has changed over the years and the like, and so some of the steers have a bit different shape. They've got a bit different kind, but they're still considered to be a dairy steer breed, and so that's a context in which I evaluated those cattle in, and so I want you to be aware of that. I think you've got a great dairy steer show here. I'm not really going to go through and talk them all the way down through. I mean, you've got a steer on the lightweight end that's in the 1,200 pound weight range, the mid 12s. Then you got a 12 and a half, a 13 and a half, almost 14, right? Just shy of 14, 1390 or something like that. I don't know, I'm close. And then we get into the 14s and up into the 15s, and then we get the monster. She told me her words. I said something about them. I said he's big, and she said he's a monster, but he's a baby. If you're going to be a monster, I need you to be a baby. It helps, okay? So, and again, she's done a nice job with that steer. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the different calves. I'll go pick you a champion, then I'll talk just a little bit, and we'll grab you a reserve. But again, it's been a privilege, and I really appreciate everything.
Congratulations to Caleb Weekman, Champion Dairy Steer.
I guess I'll say in my mind, the steer that I went ahead and used one again, it just kind of puts all the pieces together in a real way. Is he a classical, traditional look for what we usually think of as a traditional Holstein dairy steer? No, he's not. But he is certainly classified as a dairy breed, and man, he is spot on and does a lot of things really, really well. So I compliment this young man with him. With that, I'll go grab you a reserve.
Congratulations to our reserve champion dairy steer exhibited by Ian Spoke.
I hope you'll allow, but in the reserve, again, a really nice steer that I think, as far as a more of the classic look of a typical Holstein dairy steer, I think this steer just kind of marks all the boxes as well. So a pair of really nice steers to, I think, use and represent the industry in your show here today. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, 3:15, we are going to have our showmanship begin. We're starting with our senior showman. So please make your way over to the Farm Progress Arena to sign up if you've not done that yet. 3:15, we will start with senior showmanship.